This is Israel at War. I'm Steve Conover. I've asked Jim Showers, Executive Director of the Friends of Israel, to join me once again, now to give an update on the hostages taken almost 4 months ago on October 7th during the Hamas massacre. Thank you for being with us, Jim.
I'm glad to be here, Steve. Thank you for asking me.
Jim, it's almost 4 months now that the hostages have been away from their families. And you were just in Israel. What's the sense there of what you heard about the hostages?
Everybody's concerned about them. In fact, I'm wearing a dog tag that says "Bring them home now." These you see them all over Israel. It's part of a campaign to keep that message before the government, the military, that they want the hostages back. And it's a huge issue to Israel. I don't know if you remember 2006. There was a soldier who was captured and kept in Gaza for a long time, and he was finally freed in exchange for prisoners. I was in Israel leading a tour the day he was released. And we were at a site, and there was a TV there in a snack shop. There was a TV showing the release, the exchange, and all the Israelis were glued to it. The tourists were just kind of glancing at it and going on with the tours, but every Israeli was packed around that TV. It tells you how personal they take it when their own are taken hostage, held against their will, used as pawns. And we saw that on October 7th. Part of the plan, we know from the beginning, was not just to kill Jewish people, but also to take some back as hostages, because Hamas is using those as bargaining chips, if you will. We already saw the war pause for a period of time as some of the hostages were released. There's ongoing negotiations, although they don't seem to be very productive right now. We learn every few days that there are more hostages discovered, or that they learn about that are no longer alive. Life from the hostages that were released back in November, life as a hostage is very, very difficult. They're not fed well. They're not cared for well. They're locked up. It just is miserable life. It's all underground. It's all down in the tunnels. And that tunnel network, when I was in Israel, we had a gentleman speak to us who is a major in the reserves. And he said, before the war, Israel thought there was about 500 miles of tunnels underground. They now know it's over 1,000 miles of tunnels that have been built underground. So it's a massive job to go through those tunnels and to clear them out and then destroy them. Israel's doing that, but so far they've only destroyed about 20%. So there's still a lot of places that they can hide the hostages. So we pray for the hostages, and we should be praying for the hostages and for their families. Imagine the torture for their families who desperately want their loved ones back and fear the worst. And you can understand why they've been protesting. They've been blocking the Egyptian border where the aid is coming across for the Gazans to get the world's attention, to get the government's attention. They've been meeting with the prime minister. They've been protesting. They've been doing everything they can because this is such a personal issue to Israelis. It would be as if somebody took your own child, Steve. You would do everything and anything you could to try to get them back, and you would wear out your knees before God, praying that he will preserve their life and bring them back to you. And we know from the hostages that were released back in November, the psychological anguish and drama is incredible. There was, for example, one young girl that kept whispering, and they told her it was okay to talk. But when she was hostage for a couple months, she was punished if she spoke up loudly. She was only allowed to whisper, and not very much. And she could not just stop that. This is the kind of mental anguish that goes on, and the repercussions of, even though they're freed, they will live with these memories for the rest of their life. So we pray that Israel will be able to get them released, whether it's through negotiations or whether it's just through, finding where they're at and freeing them. But we have to also expect that Hamas will make that as difficult as they can.
Yeah, and just the vastness alone of the tunnels is overwhelming. But when you think of the complexity of how well they're built, when you see the communication lines that are running down the side of these tunnels, they've put all their effort into being underground instead of building infrastructure.
And millions of dollars of aid have gone to build those tunnels, and they have plumbing in them, and they have air conditioning because it's hot down there. They have rooms, bathrooms, and showers. They can literally live down there for days. And then there's over 5,000 shafts all over Gaza to go in and out of them. So they can come out for a while in some area that's safe and then go back down to hide. It's incredible. It's beyond anything anybody imagined.
That makes it incredibly dangerous for the IDF.
It does. And they have, as I understand it, they have teams that are working down there full time, and they use dogs, they use robots and drones and things like that to scope out the tunnels, look for booby traps. There's booby traps all over. There's huge metal blast doors that they've installed down there to protect one part of the tunnel network from the other if they get hit by explosives. So it's not easy going. And then the last thing they do when they've cleared out an area is, I understand it, is they use explosives to destroy the tunnel. All the money that was poured into there just for nothing.
So we should be praying for the hostages, for the IDF that are working in these dangerous conditions,
Yes.
and of course the innocent people that are in and around Gaza.
And for the families of the hostages, they're not physically going through the kind of torture that their family members are, but they're certainly being tortured mentally, and it's so frustrating when you would do anything you could to get them back, and yet there's very little you can do beyond what they're already doing, which is keeping it before the people. But listen, it's a big movement in Israel to free the hostages now, bring them home now. That's what these dog tags are about. It's just a visual reminder to the people that they're still in captivity, and we want them back, and we want every one of them back, not just some of them.
That's our prayer. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Steve.
It's important that we continue to pray for the hostages, their families, the IDF, as they operate in extremely dangerous conditions. And if you want to stand with us as we stand with Israel with a financial contribution, visit foi.org/standwithisrael.